Hi everybody, this is Oksana. So I know I did a tutorial a little while back here with a crisscross. So this is actually a completely different way of doing it and achieving a little crisscross in the front. And I think this is probably a little bit easier. So I thought that I would make a video on it for those of you that don't like the swirly pendants. Here's what that looks like. So if you want to see how I made this, just keep watching. My base wires that I'm going to be using are 21 gauge square copper, and my stone is quite small, that's why I'm using 21 gauge. If yours is a bit bigger than mine, you can size up to 20 gauge. And this spool of wire, as you can kind of see there, it's a little bit worse for the wear, but it's from riogrande.com, and it is solid copper. It is dead soft and it's not coated with anything. So if you wanted to oxidize your copper, this wire does oxidize. And you need 3 pieces. And mine are 8 inches long. And my stone, I cut these a bit long, so if your stone is a little bit bigger, it'll still work for you. My stone is 15 millimeters, or a little more than ½ inch if you're doing inches, and it looks like this. It is a Solar Quartz, and it's kind of interesting because it looks a little bit like an eyeball, and it is an oval shape, but if you wanted to use a teardrop shape, that would work too. You would just want to position that point down, but you want that rounded part on the top because that will allow us to tuck the wires in there. You can also use just a round circular shape as well. And then for my connecting wires, also from riogrande.com, we have this half round wire, and it is 24 gauge, also dead soft copper. So I usually just leave that on the spool as I unravel a bit for myself, and I'm gonna come in here right in the middle of those 3 wires. I'm gonna just take the little wire end here, and I'm gonna put it the flat side down and the half rounded side up, and I'm just gonna wrap it around a few times, however much this little end allows me to. And then once you're running out of wire here, you can work with the wire that's connected to the spool. So you would just flip it. And then for this to work, because it's connected, it will twist if you just wrap around and around. So you just want to guide it with one hand and then just turn the base wires with your other hand, and that will wrap that half round wire around your square wires. And then you don't need to do this for very long, you just need a little bit like this here just to hold them all nicely together. So you just want to cut your wires now when you're done, and you want to cut them all so the little wire ends are on the same side. I am using my Swanstrom cutters, which came in a set of tools, Swanstrom tools from riogrande.com, and I cut them like this. And now I am using, from that same set of tools, I'm using my Swanstrom pliers to press down on everything just like this. And these are the only 2 tools that I will be using in this video. So just like this. And the wire ends, they're here. on this side, and that is the side that you want touching your stone. So we're gonna curve this now. If you were using a teardrop that was point down, you would bend it in like an angular point for your teardrop to kind of sit in there. But because mine's a little oval, I need to bend kind of a rounded edge there. And then I'm gonna sit my oval in here. Try to get it to look nice and centered as I bring these wires up to meet with each other here at the top. So now I'm just gonna take my stone out. We're gonna do a little bit of troubleshooting because these square wires, as you can see, when I turn it like this, you can see the light reflecting off of the flat edge of the wire. And this particular side of my pendant, instead of being straight up, it got kind of turned inwards towards the stone. So I'm just grabbing all 3 wires when they're stacked nicely like this, and I'm just kind of turning them back outwards. In that sense, square wire can be a little bit tricky to work with because you always have to keep everything lined up and stacked together. But in another sense, it's easier to work with because if you were doing this with round wire, it's like more slippery, so it's harder to get the stone to stay put and all that stuff. So now I'm just gonna kind of curve my wires here. I think this side also needs to be turned just a little bit here, like that. Okay, so I curved them so they wouldn't be crisscrossing each other. And now I'm gonna just take my stone again, pop that back in, make sure that looks nice and centered and everything. And then I'm gonna work on bending side to side to bring these wires together like this. And after you've done that, you can kind of reinforce those little bends by coming in here with your pliers and just making the bend a little bit sharper and just pressing down on these as well. They should be stacked together. You have the 3 wires here stacked together nicely, and then the 3 on the other side, and then they're all just kind of together like this. And no wires should be crisscrossing here. Make sure these edges, the wires are all straight going across. So now I'm gonna grab my half round wire again, and I'm just gonna come in here and I'm gonna wrap it around all 6 of these wires. So there's 6 wires here, 3 from each side, and we're just gonna have a nice tight wrap, just like that. I'm just gonna push that down. And then I'm gonna take that little wire end and I'm gonna pull it through the middle like this. And then I'm just gonna trim that really, really short. And then just kind of press down on that little wire end. It should be so short that there barely even is a wire end, but sometimes you can kind of still see and feel the wire end. So I like to just press down on it to make sure that it's really out of the way there. So here's what that looks like. So now what we're gonna do is we are gonna separate these wires in groups. So the frontmost wires here are coming up, up, up. And then if I were to separate them out, it would look like this. And then the backmost wires, same thing, they're here going on the sides and the back here. And if I were to separate them out, it would look like this. So here's how you want your pendant to be. 2 wires, 2 wires, 2 wires in the middle are left here. And what we're gonna do now with our half round wire is we are gonna wrap it around, like it's still connected here. We wrap the end of it, but the rest of it is still connected to my spool. So we're gonna wrap it around the middle wires only. So I'm just using my finger to just push it in there at first, since there's like a tight space in there. If you need to kind of separate them more so you can really get in there, you can do that. But we're just gonna wrap it, and you wanna guide and turn the piece because this wire is connected to the spool, so it will get all twisted around if you don't turn the piece and you just try to wrap it. So we're just gonna do this for just a little bit to get our bail. So this is adequate. It actually does not need to be very tall, not as tall as your normal bail, just a smidge shorter actually I find works best. So I can measure this for you in a minute, but let me just trim my wire. So note that I'm trimming it here in the front, so the wire end is actually facing me and I can see it, which is different from your typical pendant. So I'm pressing this down just on all of the wire and pressing down on that wire end as well. So if I measure my bail, it measures about 15 millimeters, and in inches, again, it's the same size as my stone was, ironically. So just a little bit more than half an inch. So now I'm just gonna take my stone, pop it in there, being mindful that this is the front with the little wire end there, because the back looks very similar at this point. So on the back, what you want to do is you want to just take your pliers and you want to bend those back wires. Note that I'm putting my thumb here, so I don't just bend this whole wire down in like one giant thing. This way it kind of forms a little curve in the wire because my thumb is there, and it pushes it on the stone in almost like this little point, this little triangular kind of shape. So that's what you want to do on one side, and then we're just going to come over here onto the other side. Be careful not to grab more than just the very back wire, because you don't want to do this with the other wires, just the very, very back wire. So we've made a similar bend, just like this, and now we're going to flip it over to the front. And what you want to do is we're going to want to wedge our pliers in here where the frontmost wire is. So you want to try to get that separation so that you can put your pliers in there. That's why I pushed on it with my nail, as you saw. So you can get your pliers in there and kind of work them down where the little wrap starts there. And then once you get down there, you just kind of turn them, just turn this way, and look, it makes this little angle and pushes the wire. If it's too much, if it pushed it too far, I can just kind of gently push on it with my thumb to fix that up. So now on the other side, again, I'm going to try and just separate that wire so that I can get in there with my pliers. And then once you get in there, you just work your way down to where your little wrap begins, and you put in that angular bend. And there we go. Our stone is now trapped. Because it's a cabochon, this is why it's important that you use a cabochon. The stone is domed, which means it gets narrower and narrower and narrower as it goes this way towards the top. And so when you bring the wire higher up on the edge of the stone like this, it traps it because the stone is wider down here, so it can't pop through. And you can test your stone by kind of pushing on the back of it to make sure that it is secure. If it feels wobbly or it feels like it's gonna pop through the front, then you maybe didn't bring these wires far enough up the edge, and you would just come in here and just bend them a little more. So now it's time to finish up those other wires. So these frontmost wires, what we're actually gonna do is we are gonna get rid of them and trim them off. So the first thing I'm gonna do is grab here with my pliers, and I'm actually gonna bend up. You wanna grab pretty close, like you don't wanna be grabbing down here. As close as you can get in there. So once you bend it up, you wanna just push it down, up and down, up and down. And that will slowly push your wires really close to the other wires there. So now we're gonna come in here and cut them really short, being careful not to cut any wires behind them. So here's what that looks like. Nice and short little wire ends. Barely there, pressed up against the rest of the wrap. You can just press on them some more. And before we do our bail here, what I'm gonna do with these wires is I'm gonna put kind of a sharper bend in them, like this, just so they're going out of our way here. So what we're gonna do now with our bail, the reason I wanted to kind of bend these sharply out of the way is because I want to take my bail and I want to bring it backwards a little bit, and then I'm putting a curve in it. You can use a tool, something round to bend around, or you can just do it with your hands like I'm doing here, whatever is easier and feels more comfortable for you. But I'm basically just forming a curve, making my bail. But before you curve it too much, you want to take the ends of it and you want to start tucking them through this gap here. You can grab them on the other side here once they're tucked in and kind of help them through there. Okay, you don't want them to crisscross, so if they start to do that, fix them up. And you can even just guide them with your pliers at this point, pushing them down in there. Just want to make sure that your bail is large enough for your necklace to fit through. So this is plenty large. Okay, so we're gonna just push up on those wires like that. And now we're gonna take them, don't confuse them with those other wires that we had bent backwards. These are just the bail wires. We're gonna take them and we're gonna bend them forward. So here they are coming from the back to the front. I'm gonna help myself with my pliers here to have just a nice tight bend, just like this. Almost like just pinch them so they're wrapped around this edge here. And same thing with the other one. Just like a nice tight little wrap. Just like that. Now they're in the front. So you just want to crisscross them. I'm just trying to keep the wires straight and keep this looking symmetrical. If one little side looks higher than the other, you can just come in here with your pliers and just kind of see how I'm just pushing it down just a little bit, so you can try to get them to be symmetrical here at the top part of your little crisscross. So feel free to kind of play around with that as much as you want to. And then when you are satisfied with the symmetry, you can just take these wires and bend them to the back. You want it to be above the stone though. So the stone ends and then you bend them, because we're gonna tuck the wire ends away and we need the gap above the stone to tuck them into. All right, so there's my little crisscross. I'm satisfied with it being all even and stuff, so I'm just gonna leave myself a little wire end there. I'll show you the wire end in a minute. I know it's hard to see right now. There we go. There's my little wire ends. So here on the back, I'm just gonna take them and I'm gonna tuck them in, and then I'm gonna press down on them. Okay, so tucked away, nothing sharp sticking out. The end of the wire is tucked in there. Same thing on the other side here. And just like that. And here's how that's looking. So all we have now is these two wires in the back here. So I'm just gonna take them and put them through this little hole here. See where it's coming out of? You could put them through up here as well if you would prefer that. It just makes an ever so slightly different look, but either way it's gonna be really similar no matter which you choose. So I did one on the right side and now I'm just doing the other one on the left like this. So because I pushed them through, it creates this big curve. So you want to try to come in here and just gently and carefully, without smushing your bale, kind of squish this down a little bit. Just a little bit. Oops, that made it go to one side. Now I just have to try and fix that up a little bit. There we go. Now it's a pretty small gap. It's kind of like in line with the bale. That's much better. And here on the front, you can just kind of pull on it and then bend it to the back right underneath that other wire. So just kind of pull on it and then bend it to the back like this. Let me just zoom in a little bit. So just like that, and then we're just gonna trim them and tuck away our wire ends, and that is our very last little step here. So tuck and press down on those little wire ends like that, and the same thing on the other side. Just like that. So that is it. That is this easy little crisscross pendant. And here's the back. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.